All right, let's start off with this week, and the video I have for you this week is going to go over two things. One's going to be the Blackboard information for the week, and the second's going to be to pull up your homework and work through the details of that. So as you're watching this video, again, stop it and take a look at some information before you move on. It's a handy way to complete the week, and hopefully this helps. All right, let's take a look at first the week in Blackboard. When you pull up Blackboard for this week, you're going to see a video I've got for you right here on simple rate of return. So it's a pretty short video, but what it does is it looks at the idea of simple rate of return, and then it kind of compares it to the other types of areas that we've looked at in capital budgeting. So you want to make sure you take a look at that. All right, homework. We've got that listed right here, and I've got the homework that I'm going to go over. But before I do that, this homework is worth a lot of points. Some of you have missed homeworks, and so I'm able to give you this homework worth a whole lot of points to try to help take away some of those that you may have gotten zeros on. So really the key is here is you've got to make sure you complete this. If you don't complete it by the deadline, then this will kill you as far as your grade. So make sure that you get it done. All right, when you pull this homework up, I'm going to take this video and time to go over in detail what we've got. Let me tell you about the example. First of all, we're doing a grain storage bin that is able to be sell bulk corn to wildlife operations. So we've got hunters that come by and buy corn from us. We've got to have somebody there all the time to help them load. Got bagged corn they can get, so we're going to go ahead and buy it in bulk. We're going to go ahead and get a bagging system put together, and people are going to show up with a credit card, swipe it, get the amount of bags they need, load it, and be gone. We're going to put this operation up in the very front of our ranch right by the highway, and it'll be hopefully a business we can build. We're going to work on this for 10 years. So we're going to get this thing put together. It's going to cost us some money. Once we get it put together after 10 years, the plan is to sell it to somebody else because we'll have a clientele built up, and it ought to be easy to sell. So conservatively, or not conservatively, we got a good estimate on this. It's about $350,000 to build this. Now we're going to borrow the money because we don't have all the money up front, don't want to do it that way. So we're going to borrow at 20% down, meaning we're going to have to borrow 80% of the money left over. We're going to borrow it at 8%. We're going to pay on it for 10 years. So I've got a loan amortization here started for you. The first thing to deal with, I had that answer in there, is the balance. So what's the balance on the loan? Well, right away at time value 0, I just press equals. And actually this whole thing's costing us $350,000, but I'm going to multiply that times 1 minus that rate that I'm putting down because I'm not having to pay that. That's going to end up to be 80%, but that's a good way to do that if you just wanted to tweak this really quickly and say, what about it look like if I did 10% down? That'll automatically change my loan balance. But 20% is our number, so I've got that in a formula put together right there. The loan minus 1 times 1 minus whatever we were going to put down. So that's 80% in this case. All right, the first payment. Now we can calculate payment a lot of ways. If you just press equals PMT, you actually start getting the options of payment. However, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press the f of x function. So my payment formula is there. Press f of x. It gives me this over here, and then I can choose payment. Now, what's the rate going to be? Choose 8%. What's the time going to be? Choose 10. And then what's the present value going to be? Remember, you put a minus in front of that, and that is how much I'm borrowing, that $280. So my payment is $41,728. In year 2, you can just go to equals, choose that previous payment, and that way I can run all those down. That's my payments for 10 years. All right, what about interest? Well, equals. The loan has got a balance of this multiplied times my interest rate, and that's going to be my formula. Now that formula that I've got in there, if I double click, that D10 is what I want to stay the same because that's my rate, but I want the balance to change as I go. So I put the dollar sign in front of there, and now I can just copy and paste that all the way down. Now it doesn't have answers because it doesn't know the rest of the balances, but we'll do those in a second. All right, what about principal? Well, equals. If you're paying that much money and you're paying $22,000 down, that means you're paying that much in principal. Now, what about the balance? Well, I did have that balance, but now I've paid that much down, so now my balance is this. Those last two formulas kind of work together, so I do them, drag them down, and my answer needs to be 0 at the end of 10 years, and it is, so that way I know my payments are calculated correctly. I've also got principal and interest broken out, but I really just needed that payment, so I'm kind of good shape there on my borrowing. Now, the risk decision on this is that I'm going to plan for 10 years, and I want this thing to earn me 12%, meaning that's my invested, required, rate of return. That's 12%. That's what I want this thing to make me. So if it can make me more than that, I'm happy. If it can't make me more than that, then I have to be concerned. So that's what we need to look at. All right, so these are typical things that you know. You know what you're going to have to put down up front and maybe borrow. You need to also know what your risk is in the planning horizon. Then the last thing you need to be able to do is estimate these returns. So I've got these already given to you. Now today, in year one, what do you have to pay down? Well, equals. We are borrowing that amount of money. I've already figured it, minus that amount of money is what it's going to cost us. Now I'm doing it this direction so I can end up with a negative, because that is what we're paying out, is $70,000. You could do it several ways. You could just also look at that times 20% to get you this. Either way, but you get the same answer. Now on the loan, you're not having to pay anything today, but in year one, you are having to pay. These are the amounts of money we think we'll be able to earn above our other cost. But we're going to have a loan too. So let's go ahead and get those values in. So your loan for year one is going to be that. In fact, it's the same all the way down to 10. So net cash, well, equals. In year one, you're going to have to pay out that $70,000. In year two, you get to bring in 35, but minus, you got to pay the loan. So you're actually still short. In year three, you bring in 50, you got to pay the loan. Now you got a little extra money. So I'm just going to bring that formula all the way down. So you can see that when you get to year 10, our $200,000 to sell this to somebody after we've gotten money across these 9 years, very conservative would be our $200,000. We could look at probably more than that, but we're just going to stay conservative now. We're going to have to do some repairs to fix it up. So after all of that, we'll have $200,000 in our pocket, we think. And so we're still have to pay for that last payment on the loan, but you still get quite a bit of money back. The trouble is you got to wait 10 years. All right, so here is the information we need. Let's go to work. Simple rate of return. That's new this week, but we're going to start off with that. It's the simplest way to approach this. What we need is the average return. How do you get that? Equals. And then you can go ahead over here and double click on average, and it wants to know, well, I only want years 1 through 10. That's the average return. Not going to look at what I've got to pay up front. It's just the return years. And that's going to average 19,000. Now you may say, how's that right? Well, we're losing 6,700 in year one. We're bringing back 8,200, 82, 13,000, 3, 3, 3. It never gets to 19. How could this be an average of 19? Well, that's because in year 10, we got a huge payment here that comes back to us. So the average is simply 19,000. Now, what's the investment? Equals. We got to pay that 70,000 up front. Now I'm going to put a negative in front of that 70 so that it comes out for me to be positive, because really, what is your investment? It's 70,000. What's your average return? It's 19. That's what I need to know for simple rate of return. Over here, just equals. Just take that divided by that. That's going to give me 28%. So if you just look at something like simple rate of return and thought, man, 28% on your money, that's a good deal. You only wanted 12 and it's earning 28. So this is a phenomenal deal. It brings you lots of extra money. All right, let's go to the next one. What about payback period? When do you get your money back? Well, equals. At time value 0, you got to pay out $70,000. In time value 1, you get to pay out another $6,700, right? And then those are the same all the way down. So all I did was just grab a equals and a number. That way I could just have those all linked together. That way, if anything changes up here, these will also change. All right, so residual, what do you have? Well, equals. This is how we talked about doing payback. You had to put this much money out, plus you hopefully got some money back. In this case, you didn't, so your residual doesn't go down, it goes up. We're actually even more short. Next one. It's going to be that same amount we're short added to the money we got back. Now you're dropping it down to 68,000 short. Next, add that money over there again. Now we're 60,000 short. Save on our time. Let's just copy that all the way down. And you can see we're short every year, but it's getting to get close. Finally, in year 10, we'll get all of it paid off. So I'm going to get rid of that 127,000 extra, because that clearly means we have our money back. So the answer is it's going to take you 9, and not all the way, right? It's going to take us 9 years to get our money back. And we have 30,000 of the 10th year where we get 158,000. Now, again, I don't want the negative there, but it just gives me that number. So what's the answer? 9.19 years to get our money back. All right, so the return's awesome, but we are having to wait forever to get our money back. So maybe that's something we were concerned about. So then you move to something called net present value, which is what we led with. It's probably the most powerful tool. Let's go ahead and look at that formula. Over here, I've got recent formulas. Again, f of x gives me this. Double click. So what is your rate? Well, my required rate is this. What are your values? Remember, starts at year 1. So in year 1, my net cash is that. And in year 10, it's that. Hit enter. And there is my net present value, except for we have to add, remember, time value 0. We had to pay out $70,000. So now you can see we're to the good 3,300. What about internal rate of return? That kind of helps us make sure we're correct. Double click on IRR. It just has what are your values, and they start at today and run across 10 years. And so our investment's bringing us 13, let me add some decimals, actually 12.63%. Remember, we wanted what? 12. So we are getting our money back, but it's just almost exactly what we're needing. So we don't have a lot of extra to work with here. So what you could say is this capital investment's earning you 12.6%. You said you wanted 12. So now you know all the information. Now, what's your decision? What is the best way to evaluate this? I'm going to leave that up to you. So you'll want to make sure that you take into consideration all 3 of these tools and which one really means the most to you. Now, hopefully you've set this file up the way I did, but let's just say that we come through here and we say, you know what, that 200,000. Now, by the way, your homework is set. This is the value you're going to use. But let me show you how setting this up right can help. Because once you get this built, you could say, do a lot of what if analysis. Well, we know what 200,000 brings us. What if we were to get 250,000 for this? That'll make this worth a whole lot more. Well, it's actually going to bring your simple rate of return, of course, up. Your years is still 9.15, a little bit. It brings you to 15% return. So there are ways you can tweak this right away to try to see what it might look like if you made decisions. So you could do lots of things here. You could get rid of the loan and you could pay all the money up front. What does that look like? In fact, let's take a look at that. I'm going to press, let me go back and say that I'm back at 200,000. Let's go to that negative 350,000 up front. Let's just ignore the loan by getting rid of those. And so that is what you're getting up front. You're having to put a lot of money out there. Simple rate of return is going to drop because you got to put so much money up front. However, you end up with a higher returns, of course, because you don't have that payment. It looks like you get your money back in year 7, and that's going to be equals that 25,000. We had 45 coming in, so 7.5 years would be what it's going to take to get your money back. But when it comes to net present value and IRR, it's too much money up front. This thing does not work. So definitely it looks like that borrowing is the way to go. And so if we backtrack over all of those changes that I made, then it looks like borrowing is maybe a necessity. Even if you up the amount of money there, that it may work out, it may not. But this is the idea of capital budgeting. And these are all the 3 tools done in Excel. All right, hopefully this helps you with this week. Take a look at the information, and like always, reach out and let me know how I can help. Thanks.